My name is Jerm. This is Jerm Warfare, the battle of ideas. Etienne, it's good to have you back.
It's good to be back with you and your audience.
Yeah, so we were just chatting before I hit record that I'm sad to say that your president, Uncle Sam, is causing chaos in the Middle East.
Once again, yeah, it's an issue, and it's funny because I don't really believe that it's the U.S. policy. And so, recently I went on a kind of an epic rant. You can find it at artofliberty.substack.com until we move off of that platform, which is something I want to talk about because we're being heavily censored on Substack now, and they're not even syndicating some of the articles that we publish. But in that rant, I made the case that, Donald Trump is, in my opinion, has been installed by what I like to call intergenerational organized crime centered around banking and central banking. And, I just dropped some facts that, a lot of people don't realize, but Donald Trump was broke and has been through 6 bankruptcies. And back in 1991, he was restructured by Rothschild Inc., and the Rothschild family is probably the best, the best example of a central bank, of a family connected to banking and central banking. And he was restructured. He was was provided fresh financing by the Rothschilds. All of his debt was restructured, and that was led by a guy named Wilbur Ross, who ended up being the Secretary of Commerce in the first Trump administration. And then I believe he was swept up by the Jeffrey Epstein brownstone operation. And that's what it's called here in the United States as a brownstone, where they're, using bribery, blackmail, getting politicians, drunk, roofing them, getting them into a room with a little boy, a little girl, taking pictures, and then using that as blackmail material. Sometimes they don't have to get you drunk. You'll do it by yourself, and then they've just got you, under their thumb. But I believe that that was a Mossad operation to sweep up, prominent Americans, prominent, politicians, royalty, people like that, so that they could be under the thumb of what I believe is an intergenerational organized crime system using government, to rob and control populations, whether that's using the government of the United States to rob the population of the United States, whether that's using the government of Israel to rob the population of Israel. But once they had this kind of semi-charismatic, entertaining, fake billionaire under their thumb, I think that they crafted him into the outsider, and they did that with Hollywood. And so a lot of people don't realize this, but Trump's theatrical agent, during the time of The Apprentice, which was the show that gave him kind of the national gravitas to be able to run for president of the United States, was a guy named Ari Emanuel. And Ari Emanuel is the brother of Rahm Emanuel, who was the chief of staff for
Hold on. Ari Emanuel, he's a businessman.
He's one of the biggest super agents in Hollywood, and he's the super agent that the character Ari Gold is based on in the movie and in the television series Entourage. And so that super agent character in Entourage is actually based on Ari Emanuel, and Ari Emanuel is a Zion. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Isn't he the guy that was photographed on the yacht with Elon Musk just before Kanye West got kicked off Twitter?
I don't know that history. I know some of the.
I wonder if it's the same guy. Because, okay, so I'll give you the quick backstory. Sorry. So this was in the early days, just after Elon bought Twitter. And Kanye West was going on one of his sort of suicidal rants, which was obviously going to get him removed from Twitter. And he posted a swastika, but very cleverly done. It was like some alien cult that had the same logo. But he was obviously provoking. And then he posted a photograph of Elon Musk on a yacht with a guy called Ariel Emanuel. And in the photo, Elon looks very pale and flabby, and he's just in his shorts. And Ariel's standing behind him with, I think, a hose pipe, about to spray him so that Elon jumps off into the water. And Kanye posts this photograph with the caption saying, "This will be my last ever tweet." And he got removed, he got banned. But then Elon responded saying it wasn't that photo that got him banned. It was the previous one of the swastika.
I don't know if it's the same guy, but I'm going to be researching that the second that we get off the phone, get off this call or this interview. But what I'll tell you that I know about Ari Emanuel is he is one of these super agents in Hollywood, and a lot of people don't realize, but like Trump is an entertainer. He's got a theatrical agent. He's been on Worldwide Wrestling, and he was on The Apprentice. And I believe that, they created they made him popular so that he could be installed in the presidency as the outsider. But the people that made him popular and the people that appear to be controlling him and the people that restructured his bankruptcy and provided him capital and have him by the short hairs, it's all Zionist interests. And it's not just Zionist interests, because like I said, Ari Emanuel is not just a Zionist, but he's also the brother of Rahm Emanuel, who was the chief of staff in the Barack Obama administration. So what are the odds that somebody handling the last president is now installing or, prepping or creating the legend, as they say in intelligence agency parlance, to be able to install the next president? And so there's a third brother. His name is Ezekiel Manuel, and he's actually a eugenist that thinks everybody ought to die at 75. And he was on Joe Biden's COVID-19 task force. And so they're completely embedded in the fabric of the ruling system here in DC, whether it's Republican administrations, Democratic administrations. It's pretty serious. And then once they install him, so then who finances his campaigns? Well, his campaign has been financed to the tune of over $400 million from the Adelsons alone. And so Sheldon and Miriam Adelson are, casino magnates that have provided Trump in the three election cycles, 2016, 2020, 2024, over $400 million alone come from Zionist interests. And then once installed, what did he do in the first term? The first thing he did is he cranked up the amount of aid that we send to Israel from $3.2 billion a year in kind of pure aid, which is mostly kind of military assistance and weapons and things like that, to $3.8 billion. And then Joe Biden, who has received over $11 million from Zionist interest, AIPAC, or affiliated organizations, he adds a supplemental around $17 billion in 2024 on his way out the door. He gives them another essentially another $17 billion on top of the $3.8 billion. And then, and Trump distributes that because he did it like going out the door. So it was distributed in 2025 where he could have said no and he could have, put an end to it. But instead he gives these, the Israelis another $17 billion. Now, that's only part of what we give Israel. And so that's the direct aid, but we're giving them a variety of other aids. We're giving them loan guarantees. We have agreements where we do joint R&D with Israeli companies, and we do joint co-production with, for weapon systems. And there's another program in the United States that takes antiquated military equipment and it just gives it away to foreign governments, even though it's really not antiquated. And so we've given Israel over $6.6 billion through this program, including we gave them 15 F-15 fighters in 1991, and so supposedly it's supposed to be antiquated military equipment. Well, guess what? The F-15 fighter wasn't antiquated in 1991. Kuwait just shot down 3 of them yesterday. We're still flying the F-15 fighter. So what the heck is going on? We've given them 10 Sea Stallion helicopters. We've given them 1,000 plus trucks. So we're giving them, equipment, on the sly and saying it's antiquated and things like that. And then there appears to be money being funneled to Trump by other Zionist interests and what look like kind of under the table payoffs. And so if you don't know the Trump social, Trump's media empire did a DSPAC, which is a kind of a blank check financing for a company, and it was one of the lead investors or one of the major investors in that in Trump Social was the Susquehanna Group run by Jeff Yass, and they essentially invested a ton of money in a company that had only about I think it was like 3.2 in 2023. They had 3.2 in revenue, and they'd lost 75 million. Now, last year, the revenue went up to 3.7 million, and they lost $712 million. So they had 712 million in losses on either 7 or 3.9. I think it was 3.7 million in revenue. And so just there's shenanigans that are going on, and they seem to again all tie back to Israel. Now, what would the Rothschilds want with Israel? And I make the case in a variety of articles at artofliberty.substack.com that Israel is essentially an outpost. They created their own country because having your own country gives you, number one, it gives you diplomatic immunity. Number two, it gives you no extradition. And so if you're an intergenerational organized crime mafia, you want a place where you can go, where the big boys can go, where there's no extradition in emergencies. And so we don't have extradition with Israel, and there's been people that have been arrested in the United States that have gone to Israel to, quote, serve their sentence, and nobody really knows what happens in those cases. And so the third thing it gives you is it gives you the ability to get this foreign aid so that you can go and you can install politicians in the United States. You can fund their campaigns. You can spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and then you can get back billions of dollars. And so the total amount of direct aid outside of the antiquated military equipment and the under the table payments and things like that is that the United States has given Israel since 1948, adjusted for inflation, $25, over $300 billion. Now, that does not include a lot of things, including the cost of this war. So now, what has Israel gotten for their investment in Donald Trump and in hundreds of American politicians? Where if you took a look at the ones that were Republicans, and you took a look at the ones that are Democrats, and you took a look at the ones that are AIPAC sponsored, AIPAC would dwarf the amount of pure Republicans and Democrats. So AIPAC has over 300 members of the U.S. House on the payroll. They're financed over 300 plus members of the U.S. House. They take them to Israel. They provide them programs. Rep Matt Gaetz said that he went to an AIPAC fundraiser, and they put a little barcode on them, and then you mingle in the room, and if they like you, they can just take their smartphone out and scan the QR code and make a donation right there. And that's kind of the way you buy cattle in the United States. They've got a barcode on it, and you can bid on that that cattle, and it's literally unbelievable. And so what they're doing is they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars and buying off the government. And this is one of the problems with government is it's so easily rigged. It's so easily manipulated by moneyed interests that it's effectively, worthless as a way of organizing society. And so now we're going to have a war with Israel. And we've already so all of those numbers that I gave you don't include us attacking Israel's enemies in Yemen or us attacking Iran previously. So in 2025, Operation Midnight Thunder, I forgot what the exact was when we struck 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. That was $2.25 billion just for that one attack. So that was estimated at $2.25 billion just for that one attack. Now, in the past 4 or 5 days, we're probably at somewhere around $4 to $6 billion because those Tomahawk missiles cost $2 million bucks a shot. We're using American munitions, we're using American fuel, lubricants, like the maintenance cost on all of these things. And the American people are going to have to bear the cost, and not just the American people, but the rest of the world are going to have to bear the cost of higher energy prices, higher gas prices, so there's a lot of, additional costs. And if the war goes, past the 3 to 4 weeks that Trump promises, or it goes months or even longer, those costs could escalate to $200 billion. And so what I think the state of Israel, with its little blackmail operation and its little, we're funding American politicians, we're installing American politicians, I think it's probably one of the greatest ROIs in history.
I said Ariel Emmanuel. That's incorrect. His name is Ari Emmanuel. So you were saying it correctly. I had it wrong. But it's the same guy. I looked it up while you were talking.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And so, connected at the top of the U.S. government, okay, on media platforms that are controlling the information that society receives. So the number one weapon that is being used against us after the money's controlling the value of the money and being able to steal the value out of everybody's money is the ability to control the information you receive. And that's what Twitter is. And that's what X is.
And that's why Elon removed that photograph and why he banned Kanye West. It wasn't because of the swastika that was the previous tweet. And Kanye was dead right. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, and by the way, this is cool. So this is a college learning, and so that's something I didn't know, and then that puts another piece into the puzzle, and this is how we're slowly and surely exposing this intergenerational, it's an organized crime system. It's not the Jews, but it is Jewish organized crime that is hiding within the Jewish, people, and using the fact that it's Zionism, which is a religion. It's the belief that Israel has to have a political state. I'm a voluntarist. I don't believe in any states. I'm for the 0 state solution in Israel because government is, again, the worst way to organize society. One of the reasons is because it is so easily rigged by moneyed interests. And by, so you're controlling the media, you're controlling the information that people receive. Number one, you're tricking them into that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary when it obviously isn't. But once you control the media, you can control the political process because you can control the information that people receive about the candidates in a way that allows you to hijack the whole thing and then transfer, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to your friends in Israel or to, banks on Wall Street through quote unquote bailouts and stimulus or, ethanol subsidies or weapon systems that we don't need to fight wars based on lies and manufactured intelligence like we're doing again in Iran this week.
Yeah. I was a bit facetious at the beginning of our conversation when I gave a lot of the credit of the current invasion of Iran to Trump. Trump is mostly middle management. I think we all know that by now. He's a placeholder. Even if he weren't there, whoever was there would be doing the same thing, because you're dealing with the military-industrial complex, which is a lot more powerful than the president.
So my thesis again is it's think of government as a technique for robbing and controlling populations. And so different organized crime families around the world are running government on their population to be able to extract resources and to be able to control them and keep the populations under their thumb. And so one of the ways that they're able to extort money is through, buying weapon systems that we don't need to fight these wars based on lies and manufactured intelligence. And if you kind of just look at my thesis, it's not, the United States versus Iran, or Iran versus the United States. It's the government of the United States versus the people of the United States. It's the government of Iran versus the people of Iran. And so the governments don't want there to be strong alpha males. And so every once in a while, we're going to have some wars where we brainwash and indoctrinate our strong alpha males with the mandatory government school and the scouting programs and the propaganda that comes over the television, and we get them all hyped up and we fight them against each other and we kill them off, and we make money doing it through the weapon systems that we don't need for the war that we didn't have to fight. And then we don't have to worry about another crop of alpha males that, if they figured out how they were being robbed and controlled by government, might be coming after us. And so warfare benefits this organized crime system in eliminating a lot of the people that, if they understood what was going on, wouldn't be pointing the guns at a foreign people across the sea that they don't know and aren't really doing anything to them. They'd be marching on Washington, D.C., Tel Aviv, London, and other capitals around the planet. And so that's an aspect of what's going on that I think it doesn't get talked about enough.
I've had Larkin Rose on my podcast. He wrote, The Most Dangerous Superstition, which echoes what you're saying. And I've, for the longest time, been heavily influenced by thinkers like Rothbard and Hayek and Mises, and my gateway was Milton Friedman back in the day. But I've found one of the authors who've been, for me, the most profound is Hans Hermann Hoppe, who wrote Democracy, the God That Failed. And at least a monarchy is a better system than a democracy, because it's private ownership of land.
Well, it's not just private ownership, but the monarch has a long-term interest in his kingdom, whereas politicians have a short-term interest in trying to steal everything they can in the 2 to 4 to 6 years that they're in office here in the United States. Yeah. And so that short time horizon leads them to rip out, steal the silverware, like the Clintons were caught stealing, the silverware out of the White House and stealing the artwork out of the lighthouse and things like that. Whereas the monarch has a long-term interest in the kingdom, and he's making long-term investments, long-term decisions versus the very, very short time horizon of politicians. And so you get better outcome. Yes, less susceptible to being bribed, blackmailed, and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, I'm a voluntarist. I don't believe in the necessity. I don't believe in the legitimacy, and I don't believe in the desirability of having a government. And I think that we would all be dramatically wealthier without government. I think you would really see society flourish, and there would be more harmony in the world, because you wouldn't have to be fighting over the local school board at the ballot box. You could afford to take your child to any kind of school you wanted. You don't have to have a knife fight, for the school board at the ballot box, where if you lose, you get LGBTQT studies or critical race theory studies or Islamic studies forced on your kid. It's not one size fits all, winner take all, loser gets screwed. It's, you want Waldorf? Buy Waldorf. Do you want Montessori? Buy Montessori. Do you want vocational education for your child? Get vocational education. And voluntarism puts you in the driver's seat. You get to make all the big decisions. The government's not making it for you. And because you're spending your own money, you're spending it way, way more efficiently than you would, otherwise. For armed protective services, which the government calls the police, where I live in Memphis, Tennessee, the quality is so poor that almost every single merchant, guaranteed every single shopping center, every single mall, every single, kind of strip thing has their own security in addition to the security that they're forced to pay for through the monopoly government. So why don't we just buy our own security? Why don't we have competition in the market? Who better protects neighborhoods? Is it ADT or is it Garda? And these are a couple of companies in the United States that provide armed protective services today that would definitely provide armed protective services if the government didn't say, hey, you can only go so far. You can call us if something happens and, you can defend yourself, but like the government has a monopoly on, the courts and the ability to arrest and other things. If they didn't have that monopoly, then these other companies would provide it and you would have a market dynamic and you would have competition in the market and you could see not just who is better at protecting, but which one's better at providing restitution, because that's really what people want, right? And so the monopoly system here in the United States is about retribution. We're going to, throw you in a cage and we're going to, make it, these horrible prisons in the United States, versus that's not really what people want. What people want is they want their money back. And so which one gets more people's money back? So there would be, I think, way better outcomes without government than with government. And there's virtually nothing that government does that could not be done by the free market. The only thing government does is redistribution, and that's immoral and that shouldn't be done anyway. And so we get rid of that, and then real charities, genuine charities, can flourish, and there's not a dishonest middleman in Washington, D.C. taking his cut.
I was doing some firearm training last week, and the one guy that was there, the trainer, he was discussing why it's so important for more South Africans to get guns, because, as he said, the government does not want you to be armed. And you have to then ask, why?
Right. And so we have a government that's actively trying to disarm us. And so we're asking ourselves the exact same question, here in the United States, because the government is actively trying to disarm us. And so there's a variety of, we've got a group called the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Administration, and they're arresting gun owners for, little piddly violations of laws. There's a gazillion gun laws. And we have different states that are enacting something called red flag laws. And so, you have a Second Amendment guarantee to have a gun, except in certain states that have passed these red flag laws. And then anybody can go to a local court. The government can go itself. It can say that it believes that you're a danger to others, and then they can just take your rights. And the first state that rolled that out was a state called Maryland. And the first time that they tried to do it, there was like a 60-year-old man that they went to go take his guns, and he thought he had a Second Amendment, and they shot and killed him dead. And so I've never been in the military, but I'm armed up to be able to defend myself. I've had private firearm training as well. And I think that, I think it's part of, being a man is being able to defend the tribe, being able to defend the community. And I've gone and I've spent my own money on tier 1, training. I've got almost all of the same gear that a special forces operator, might have and possess. And so I think you would still have, that dynamic in society, even without the government military. There's hundreds of millions of guns here in the United States. Nobody's going to invade the United States for the same reason that the Japanese identified in World War II, because there would be a rifle behind every blade of grass. And I think it's just another example of if we were all armed and trained, there would not be, we just don't need government to be protecting us when we can protect ourselves.
However, as Yuri Bezmenov said in his interview in 1984 with G. Edward Griffin, he said that the United States is going to implode without a single bullet being fired.
Yeah.
And he's referring to the information war. He's referring to propaganda and information wars.
Well, I think he's referring to that, and I think he's the best way to destroy a country is to debase the currency. And so, here in the United States, that's what the government has done, is they've destroyed the currency, which is
Zionism.
Right. So the bankers in the United States, the bankers lobbied and bribed Congress in 1913 to pass something called the Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve Act created the third bank of the United States. We'd had two government central banks before. Both of them had 20-year charters. Both of them were found to be corrupt. They were kicked out at the end of their 20-year charter. The bankers waited, a generation until everybody had forgotten about the previous two, banks, and they created the Fed, which backstopped the money center banks, the JP Morgans and the Citigroups and the Wells Fargos and that crew, to be able to engage in something called fractional reserve banking, where they can create money out of thin air. Now, before they did that, here in the United States, we had gold and silver that could not be printed on a printing press. And that hard money gave us a level of prosperity that was unequal in almost the entire world. Like we had such a little government. There was barely a government in Washington, D.C. to ruin things, and we had hard money. And those two things combined to unleash an amazing amount of innovation, an amazing amount of entrepreneurship, and that's what really created the core wealth of the United States and made us, one of the strongest countries on the planet. Was that free market and was that hard money. Now, once they got the Federal Reserve in 1913. What many people believe is that they began, so back then a $20 bill was a warehouse receipt for a 1 ounce gold coin known as a St. Gaudens or a Walking Liberty coin. And that 1 ounce coin, would buy economists like to use a finely tailored man's suit, a belt, and a pair of shoes as kind of like a cultural touchstone, because in Roman times, a gold coin would buy a fine toga, sandals, and a belt. In the 1920s, a 1 ounce gold coin would buy a finely tailored, suit, a beautiful set of shoes, and a belt. If you took the $20 bill and the $20 gold coin and you buried them in the earth and you dug them back up today, the $20 bill won't buy you anything, but the gold coin is worth $5,000 and will buy you a finely tailored suit and a great pair of shoes and a belt. And so what happened was the banks got into trouble. It's believed that they were printing excess warehouse receipts, dollars that could not be redeemed. And so they went and again, they pressed on the Roosevelt administration in 1933, and by executive order, they stole all of the gold. They forced the American people to turn in their hard money, and they replaced it with these rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets that are losing, more and more value every single year. And that's how the United States is going to collapse. The bankers stole our hard money. They replaced it with money that they can create out of thin air. So this fractional reserve banking You're not going to a bank and borrowing deposit your money when you get a mortgage or you get a car loan. You go to the bank and they just credit your account with digital dollars that they create out of thin air, and then you spend the rest of your life paying off a loan that they created out of thin air. That's the reason the bank is the largest building in every city on the planet, is because they're stealing the value out of the money, because that process is inflationary. That process of creating all of these excess dollars reduces the purchasing power of all the other dollars in circulation. So they're stealing your money the same way as if they stuck their hand in your pocket and took your money. They're stealing the value out. They're just doing it in a tricky way that most people don't understand. And then the first thing that the banks did is they bought up the media. So the media isn't going to tell you how that process works and how that's going on. And that's the Rothschilds. And that's who's financing Trump. And that's who's in bed with Elon at Twitter. And that's why information is being algorithmically censored on Twitter. That's why information is being algorithmically censored on Substack. That's the reason information is being algorithmically censored on Facebook. We just got kicked off Facebook last week. We had a 5 Meme Friday page, and they kicked it off for inauthentic behavior. They kicked off my Etienne de la Boetie account in 2018 in the kind of the first wave of censorship, and we build back up new pages, and they kick us off again. And so that's really the most powerful weapon that this organized crime system has, is the control of information. They're able to control the information that people receive, so people don't understand what's going on, so people think that the system is legitimate, so people don't understand how they're being robbed and how they're being tricked, because they're almost never going to see it except through one of these pirate broadcasts like yours, where we're literally like the Nebuchadnezzar rising and broadcasting a pirate signal to be able to tell people what's really going on, because you're not going to find it on the monopoly media. You're not going to find it on CNN, Fox. You're not going to find it, in one of these controlled platforms.
A war is a bad thing, and it doesn't benefit you on the ground, ever.
Yeah. Now, it benefits insiders, though. So if you know that the United States is going to go to war with Iran, you can make all kinds of money.
Emanuel. Like Ari
Right.
Emanuel. Most likely benefits him.
Yes, yeah, but like you can make investments in defense companies. You can make investments in oil futures. You can make there's a variety of ways that insiders can profit while the people suffer. And really, there's one more aspect that I don't think that people really appreciate. And one of the things that I feel the worst about is the soldiers, the soldier's that have been tricked through this mandatory government school system and these scouting programs and these, the propaganda that makes the government the hero and makes the military the hero on every television show in the United States. It's an unbelievable level of it's garbage, and it's propaganda. Now these kids are being forced to murder people in another country, and they're going to have to deal with the karma, and they're going to have to deal with the reality of that situation. There was a school that was bombed in Iran the other day with over 150 kids. Were alleged to be killed in that one attack, and that's 150 dead kids. And somebody, there's people in the American military that did that, and now they were tricked into that, and now they're going to have to deal with having murdered 150 kids. And that is the poverty of war. And that's one of the things we're trying to stop at the Art of Liberty Foundation is we're trying to expose this so we're not out there, American kids aren't out there killing other kids.
I was driving in the car with my wife when we were talking about this attack on Iran. And she said, I would never want you to go and fight a war for a bunch of people who take my money at the end of every month.
Yeah.
She said, you'll only fight the war if it's for our family off our community. That's that.
Yeah, and that's my philosophy. It's the only time that you should use violence is defensively. And anytime you're using violence offensively, then you're the bad man. That's one of the ways you know that you're the bad man. And so part of the problem with the American military and other militaries that are engaged in these foreign wars for resources or, for empire or whatever it is you're agreeing to set your morality aside and murder anybody that you're told to murder. And that's the deal, for a paycheck. You're agreeing to set your morality aside and unquestioningly obey orders that will result in people's death, essentially for a paycheck and for obvious lies. There is absolutely no interest the United States has at all in Iran. Iran isn't attacking any other countries. Iran isn't doing anything bad. Iran hasn't attacked the United States. There is not a reason in the world why we should be in Iran, and anybody can see the quid pro quo with the money that Israel is providing. This only benefits Israel and investors, certain investors, and members of the Trump administration and other bankers and people like that. That's who this benefits. And then the soldier is popular, not popularly, but like I don't know if you've heard the term soul dyer.
No.
Soul dyer. Soldier is a soul dyer because they're killing their own soul.
Wow, I've never thought of that.
They're setting their morality aside and they're murdering whoever they're told, to do. It's called order following, and it's the number one pathway to evil. You should never, ever, ever take a job where you have to obey every single order that you're given. And that really that's how you know that you're the bad man. And it's
just think about it though, right? You are going to fight in somebody else's war. It's not your war.
Yeah.
The propaganda will make you believe that it is your war, but it's not.
Yeah. You're murdering for somebody else. You're agreeing to commit murder for somebody else for not a lot of money either. It's not a lot of money in the American military.
But don't worry, Hollywood makes movies to talk about how great you are.
Yeah, and that's the great poverty, and that's the biggest weapon. So the funny thing is then the most powerful weapon in the U.S. arsenal is that control of perception, is the ability to control the information that people receive, to trick them into thinking they're not a free and independent human being. You're an American or a Canadian or a South African. And by virtue of where you're born, you've got to pay this tithe to the capital, and that's part of your duty. And it's heroic to go and die in these wars, and that the government is the hero in every single movie. And we have to algorithmically control the information that everybody receives through government-affiliated programs and government-affiliated social media partnerships with Facebook and Twitter and X, because otherwise there'd be vaccine hesitancy in the case of COVID-19. So it isn't, it's not just like us theorizing that this algorithmic manipulation of these platforms is going on. Here in the United States, we had a series of hearings, weaponization of government hearings in the United States. And it came out in these hearings that these platforms were algorithmically controlling the information that society received during the COVID. Now, it still goes on outside of the COVID, but it became established fact when at both the weaponization of the government hearings and when Elon Musk released some of the files between Twitter and the agencies that were censoring using Twitter. And one of those stated reasons was that we can't, we're going to turn down information, even truthful information, that would cause vaccine hesitancy. And so that's an example of, it's not just that we're, speculating that these platforms are censoring. These platforms have been caught censoring information, even true information that they knew was true for, spurious stated objectives.
You remember that movie American Sniper, based on that Navy SEAL, what's his name, Chris Kyle? Now,
I do. Oh.
Here's the thing, though, right?
Yeah.
This guy is celebrated, and in general conversation, there is a lot to celebrate. It's a phenomenal feat to shoot somebody at just under 2 kilometers away. I mean, it really is incredible, the technical skill required. But just take a moment to think about what's going on here. A guy is being celebrated for going into another country and killing around 160 people.
Yeah, murdering them through a telescope.
People who he's never met. He's being paid to do this by the government, and then he's being propped up to be a hero. It's all inverted.
And, not only is he being propped up, but like he's being made a hero using all of the techniques of Hollywood, from, getting, his character is played by, an attractive actor. They're going to use, music that instills this. They're going to give him a backstory. They're going to show him with his family. They're going to make him look like a great, they're going to weave an artificial view of this guy that probably has nothing to do with reality, but they're going to use all the tricks and techniques that Hollywood has to make him lovable, likable, and admirable, even if that's not true. And one of the things that's going on, there's a great documentary that I would recommend to your audience called Theaters of War. And in Theaters of War, they break down that there's been over 1,000 movies, 1,000 television shows that we know of where the Pentagon has had has had some role in the production of that movie. And so almost everything you've ever seen with military equipment has been financed by the Pentagon in some way, shape, or form. And once they agree to help you with the movie, then they have 100% script control, and they're literally the producer has to give them the script, and then they go through the script, and they're like, if it's a Vietnam movie, we're not going to talk about the My Lai massacre. We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to talk about that. And so, what the documentary Theaters of War breaks down is they're actually changing history in many ways. Like, the information that is presented to the, American and global population that watch these movies is not indicative of what happened in the time, because they're not going to allow you to see any facts that would, would tar the military. The military has to be the hero. The military has to be glorified. We're going to excise out any crimes that the military committed. We're not going to tell you that we had to burn down the village to save it. We're only going to show you the glory of fighting for your buddies side by side, and the camaraderie of war and things like that. You're never almost going to see it. There are exceptions. Full Metal Jacket. Every once in a while, they'll Hollywood will sneak one through. But for the most part, there's over 1,000 movies and 1,000 television shows that the government has been involved in, and that gets back to what is the most powerful weapon on the planet. It isn't nuclear weapons. It's the ability to control the information that society receives so that they can be tax farmed and robbed and stolen from and controlled. And that's worth trillions and trillions of dollars, because that's how much they're stealing here in the United States. The Pentagon is missing trillions of dollars. We've handed trillions of dollars to Wall Street in quote unquote bailouts and stimulus through a program called the TARP, the TALF, Maiden Lane, and others during 2008. And we printed up another $1 trillion during the COVID. And it's just craziness of how much money is going out the back door. But the American people's never going to find out about that, because the most powerful weapon is keeping them from understanding what's really going on.
And people don't realize how manipulated they are. I mean, mind control is a real thing. You were just talking now about the influence of Hollywood. Let's just stay on that for a second, right? Mm-hmm. You will never see a Jewish terrorist. It's always an Arab, almost always.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
in a movie. And mercenaries are never normal Americans. They have to be Russian or from some country that's got a strange accent, right?
Definitely.
And you're right. The military is always made, the FBI and the CIA are always made to look like the good guys, almost always.
Yeah. So are you familiar with the little short Planet of the Arabs? Have you heard of that? Planet of the Arabs? So there's a little short film. It was made over a decade ago, maybe even 2 decades ago. But back when it was made, there were about 1,000 movies produced by Hollywood that had Arab characters, and out of those 1,000 movies, there were 920 where the Arabs were portrayed negatively, usually as terrorists, usually as bad people, whatever. There was 30 or so where they were portrayed neutrally, and there was about 40 where they were the good guys or the heroes, or they were portrayed passionately. But most people, and then what they did in this movie is they just string all of these scenes together where the Arabs are, about to cook off a nuke, in some American city, and they've got all the nukes, or, the scene where they shoot in Back to the Future, they shoot at Marty and the dock in the parking lot, and it just scene after scene, and Chuck Norris kicking, Arab ass, and Steven Seagal kicking Arab ass, and Jean-Claude Van Damme kicking Arab ass, and it was just funny to see it. But that 900 to 30. And so what is Hollywood, why is Jewish Zionist Hollywood so against the Arabs? And I think they've been setting the stage for these wars of conquest, to be able to expand Greater Israel, to be able to steal resources and manage resources in the region. And also, Islamic banking doesn't charge any interest. And so that's another thing. So usury is forbidden in the Islamic banking system. And so I don't think they want people to know that there's, a banking system outside of that. Have you had Jason Christoff on for Planet Mind Control yet?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen it?
Yes.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Very, very good.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the mind control. So break it down.
No, hold on. No, you know what broke my brain in his film was the amount of coffee promotion. It didn't occur to me how they push coffee. It's incredible.
Once you see it, it's kind of, my new book is called To See the Cage is to Leave It, 25 Techniques the Few Use to Control the Many. And one of the things you said you were going to send me that book, and you haven't. You haven't gotten a copy of that book yet? I will get you a copy of that book.
Thank you. All right. Please carry on.
Okay. To see the cage is really to leave it. And one of the things we say about the book is, because we're exposing a lot of the techniques that, that Christoph talks about in the movie. And once you see it, one of the things that we say a lot is once you see it, you can never unsee it. So even if you flip through this book, you're going to understand that they're product placing the American flag the exact same way they're product placing the coffee and the alcohol and the beta male in Planet Mind Control. And I was just Jason Christoph's a friend of mine, and I was emailing him the other day, and I was saying, hey, you know, the one thing you could have added to that was the fact that they're product placing the American flag. And in the book, one of the techniques that we talk about, the 25 techniques, the few used to control the many, is creating the religion of statism within the population using the monopoly media and the propaganda system that we just, talked about and described. And one of the examples that I have is I've got a little 8-minute video of every product placement of the American flag in just 12 Michael Bay movies. And so in 8 minutes, this rolls through just the scene where they're product placing the American flag, and it's only on the screen for a second, and an arrow points to it, and a counter goes ding, and there's a counter on the screen that's running. And so for 8 minutes, you're watching this thing go ding, 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 and there's 469 product placements of the American flag in just 12 Michael Bay movies. And then once you see that, once you realize that that's going on, the same with the coffee, you're like, I never noticed that. Now I can't watch a movie without noticing I'm like, there's the coffee, there's the alcohol, there's the flag, there's the coffee, there's the alcohol, there's the flag, there's the beta male, there's the coffee, there's the alcohol, there's the flag, there's the beta male.
The beta male thing is something I noticed, admittedly, a few years ago. In fact, it was blatantly obvious to me. You know, if you watch The Simpsons or Married with Children or just about any sitcom or any movie, men are always made to look ridiculous. Always. And if they are not made if they're not made to look ridiculous, at some point there's going to be a twist where they are.
Yes, or as Dave Chappelle has pointed out, or they'll put you in a dress. You know about that?
Yes. Dave Chappelle's great.
He's absolutely great, and he's got another quote that I have in my book, "Government: The Biggest Scam in History." If you're black, it's a gang. If you're Italian, it's the mob. If you're Jewish, it's a coincidence, and we will never speak about it. But that dynamic of putting black men in dresses, and when they came, I don't know if you've ever heard him tell the story, but like whether it's Martin Lawrence or whether it's Eddie Murphy or whether it's The Rock or whoever it is, like you're made to wear the dress. And then they came to Chappelle, and he's like, I ain't wearing the dress. And they're like leaning on, like it's a very funny story. They're leaning on, like, oh no, this is going to be a really funny bit. And, we want you to, where he's like, I'm not going to wear the dress. And they're like, yeah, but they're like, we got to get you to wear the dress. I've been told, somebody told me to get you to wear this dress, because we want to emasculate you. We want to, we're running a program, and it's your turn to wear the dress. And he just wouldn't wear the dress. And I love it.
The feminization of men has been going on for a long time, and I think it has been highly successful. I was in Europe a couple years ago, 2023, I think, and more specifically, I was in Amsterdam. And I said to some friends of mine, I saw a lot of males, but I saw very few men.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, we're killing them off, or we're shooting them up with vaccines. We're doing, so the guys that go into the military, the ones that do have, I'll give the military a little bit of credit in the sense that it does sweep up a lot of, very strong men that are willing to defend their country. And I think a lot go in, for that reason. And then once the military gets them in there, the military breaks them and frankly ruins a lot of them. And so one of the other techniques that we cover in the book is and it's actually dozens of techniques, but like one of the techniques is, what happens to you in military training. They're going to segment you off from the rest of society. They're going to put you in the uniform the single form, which is kind of like a engineered artificial conformity, so they get you into a group think, group, dynamic. They're going to shave your head, which replaces your individual appearance with a group appearance, is another way of your subsuming you into the group think and the obedience. They're going to use sleep deprivation. They're going to use threats. They're going to use they're going to, in the Marine Corps in the United States, they actually take the doors and the walls off the toilet stalls, so you never have a moment of private time during basic training to even think about what's being done to you. They're going to have you sing march cadences that normalize murder. They're going to inject you with dozens of suspect vaccines and crazy things. It's rumored that they put either saltpeter or bromine into the is it bromine? I forgot the chemical, into the food to dampen your libido. And there was a study done, I think, I forget the year it was done, but they found that like 30+% of U.S. troops had erectile dysfunction versus about 7% in the whole population. And these are young guys, and and so something's going on there. And then by the time you go through that, and then there's we published something in the Daily News where the food that they're giving, there's a group here in the United States called Moms Across America, and they went and they tested the food, both MREs and food that they got samples from American military bases, and they found heavy metals and veterinary chemicals, and they found it's absolutely shocking. It's at the dailynews.substack, daily news from AOLF.substack.com, and you can put in military meals or whatever, and you can see the story about that. But it's a shocking amount of chemicals that are put into have been found in testing the meals coming off of military bases and things like that. They're going to control the information that you receive. So it's only going to be, it's Armed Forces television, Armed Forces radio. It's, you're not allowed to go and see this interview on any of the government military networks, ZipperNet, NipperNet, whatever these networks are called. You're not allowed to actually go to certain places and certain sites. In situation rooms, they're only going to have CIA, CNN, or Fox News on the monitor to tell you what's going on in Iran or other countries, or it's so they're controlling the information that the troops receive. They're going to force you to do the flag worship ceremony every day. They're going to there's so many there's dozens of techniques that they're going to run on you to produce this order follower. And then it's so negative that the rate of suicide in the troops is astronomically above the rate in the civilian population, especially among, by the way, Marine Corps drill sergeants. And we have another article that breaks down the tragedy of the Marine Corps drill sergeant and the amount of suicides going on in that program for what you're forced to do to other men. And it's just a tragedy. So they're gonna break you, in many ways. You're gonna go in, and you may get the Camaro, you may get to fly fighter jets to the upper atmosphere, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to do things that you didn't want to do, and that's going to have a psychological effect on you for the rest of your life.
Etienne, I'm looking at the time. Okay, so let's come in for landing here. What is the takeaway?
Well, we talked about a great many things, but I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do with the Art of Liberty Foundation is, number one, we're trying to expose the illegitimacy and the criminality of government on its face, and that's really what makes us unique. Is that we're not, you can't reform government, and it's a bad idea to begin with. Having a government, it doesn't work. And so it's absolutely illegitimate. You can never have a legitimate government. You can't have it through a coronation. You can't have it through an election. Democracy is the moral equivalent of gang rape or of a lynching. And so the good news message is you don't really need government. Everything that government does would be done better, faster, cheaper by the free market. And we would all be dramatically wealthier, and we would have much more harmony in society if we weren't trying to, organize society in this easily rigged system. Where in the United States, frankly, we vote on unauditable black box voting machines and easily rigged mail-in paper ballots where somebody can just drive up in the middle of the night to the Secretary of State's office with a truckload of ballots and now your vote means nothing. So it's a dumb idea. Like, government isn't just illegitimate, but it's a dumb idea. It's not like if we just got the right people in there, no, it's a dumb idea. The U.S. Constitution did not protect rights. The U.S. Constitution did not limit government. There's no way of doing that. You don't want to give a monopoly on violence to a group of people in society and then think they're not going to rob you, once you do that. And so that's really the good news message. And then the other thing that we're trying to make people understand is that, whether or not you believe in having a government at all, like maybe you are a strict constitutionalist or minarchist or whatever it is, the one thing that almost all of us can agree on is the government in Washington, D.C. is being run as a criminal enterprise. There are trillions of dollars missing. It is going out the door to identifiable groups like the Rothschild Israel and central banker propped up Israel. And so we're exposing the criminality of government, and we're doing it, and we're saying, we're calling it out as organized crime. There's a lot of other public policy organizations in Washington, D.C. and around the country that pretend, that kind of go along with it and aren't, and are afraid to call out the Zionism and the abject criminality. Not us. That's kind of what makes us unique. And so the good news message is that, that what we're doing at the Art of Liberty is we're producing kind of like a one-way revolution, because once you realize that government's illegitimate and once you realize it is organized crime, then most people aren't going to participate in that, especially when they're running game on you, especially when they're tricking you and they're using these 25 techniques that I outline in To See the Cages, to Leave It. Like, once you realize they're tricking you, most people don't want to get tricked or chumped or fooled, so they're not gonna participate in that. So that's what we're all about. You can find us at artofliberty.org. I mentioned the Substack, which is going away. That's the one thing that we didn't get to talk about, but like, we're being incredibly censored on Substack, so we're moving to Ghost too. I know you already moved to Ghost, and I'm sure you saw the same censorship that we did, and so we're in the process of doing that right now. But for now, it's at artofliberty.substack.com. You can get the book To See the Cages, To Leave It at seethecage.com, and you can get my first book at government-scam.com, and then we've got a bunch of book bundles and things like that at the store at artofliberty.org/store.
Etienne de la Boetie squared. Thank you for joining me in the trenches.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you.